Okay, so I just wanted to talk about a few things. Seinfeld. I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld, so I want to get into just the nuts and bolts of deconstructing that. And then I want to talk about the readings I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of because I haven't been doing this as much. I've been doing more kind of live, in person, just these kind of ceremony. And to be honest, I haven't been recording them, for better or for worse. They're not necessarily busking or even like a public performance per se. They're somewhat of a ritual and just sort of like an art event or just like a happening that I want to contribute to this sort of like realness of New York and the surround and just the kind of action. And I've been doing them all over Manhattan. So it's been kind of a big project, scootering. And I spend hours, most these days, and I've probably done it, I don't even know, 6, 7, 8 times by now. I'll leave here around 2 or so, or I kind of get where I'm going around 2 or so. And I go until dark, till 7 or 8. And then it's usually a few miles away. Central Park, is 4 miles north or something. Or I've been going recently more south. I started up in Central Park earlier in September. And then I've been doing the extreme southern tip of Manhattan more recently, because there's all these things in the air, right, with 20th anniversary of 9/11 and Occupy Wall Street also 10th anniversary. So I went down to Zuccotti Park the other day. I read there. And it is kind of like spellcasting. I read this thing I got this book, Beats at Naropa, edited by Ann Waldman. And it was a talk Philip Whalen was giving about Lou Welch, and he was saying that they did these readings around Mount Tamalpais. They took the bus up there. He said it was one of the few things they did that was kind of a concerted effort. And I don't know if it was a conservationist thing or what exactly the ceremony was, the purpose was, but they did these readings at various points around Mount Tamalpais where they recited sutras. So, I don't know. I sort of went into this initially thinking, I need to be some kind of street poet. I need to, capture an audience and turn it into some kind of performance. Now I'm kind of more in a place I'm hopefully building to that. But if I can just get out there in a public space with my PA, with my amplifier. So I've got it in this black backpack that Brother Eamon gave to me, the perfect size for my PA, and I've got a wireless mic, so I can just hook it on, take my scooter, bam. I was up in Morningside Park, or whatever that park is on the west side on the river, on the Hudson. I did a bunch of readings, one by the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, so all these different kind of ceremonial kind of locations, overlooking the Hudson. Generally, I try to find a spot where people are walking by. If I can get one or two, because my poetry is kind of composed of that at this point. It's just kind of particles or isotopes of phrasing and of phrases, just little sound bites, really, that kind of pop, and they're all strung together. So if you're walking by and you hear 2 or 3, 4 things I say real fast, and you remember one of them, they're meant to be like little diamond bullets of wisdom or koans or whatever, tweets, jokes, one-liners, good lines, just the most vivid thoughts I have, the most perfectly composed kind of sentences or fragments, little instances I find of interesting language, kind of evocatively defiant syntax or something. So I'm not necessarily trying to, capture people's attention. Although, so on Saturday I was at the exact southern tip of Manhattan, down near the Battery, and there's like a fort there, and there's the ferry to Liberty Island, and there was these guys, the Showtime guys, and they literally just have the best ultimate stage. There's this unbelievable like public sculpture with this huge walls, and like it creates this unbelievable stage with concrete, and it's right on the river. And so this fucking ferry that goes to Liberty Island or whatever, Statue City cruise, pulls up literally right there, and the people are held on the boat while it's docking, while it's loading. And so you have a captive audience of the people just like waiting to get off the boat up on the decks and shit. And so they're hyping their show in this amazing, I mean, the lineation of like kind of like the cracks in the concrete and things are like so lined up, and you know, downtown Manhattan skyline is right there. It's really just an unbelievable like theatrical space, really, and it's free. And so they had this guy who's a Michael Jackson impersonator. He starts, and then guys, you know, in like red kind of tracksuits like Adidas, they come in, they start breakdancing and doing just unbelievable. I mean, they're all totally. It's an incredible performance, really. It's really amazing. Public art, you know, and they're just so smart about how they do it, because the fucking, you know, these people are just chomping at the bit to get off, and the guy's saying 5 minutes till showtime, or 30 more seconds till showtime, and he's waiting for the people to get off the boat. And by the time they get off, you know, some of them will have kind of accrued. You start to think about that stuff, you know, where do you get the most views in public? Where's the most traffic? You know, I'm not at the point ready yet where I'm really like I said, trying to break forth and like capture people per se. I'm not going out with the guitar. I'm not busking, and I'm not even really performing at this point. It's almost like a private. It's almost like a radio performance. I want it to be just auditory more than anything. And to be honest, I'm getting less nervous about it as I do it more, and as I see that it's no big deal. You know, people in New York don't generally really react to hardly anything. That's just like an unspoken law of New York. It's just like you don't care. You ignore everything. Like or like anything, you're willing to just like accept anything that's happening as like part of, even if it's like really disturbing, or you know, some person doing some crazy thing, you kind of just like, you know, avert your eyes and keep going your way or whatever. That's not to say that people totally ignore what I'm doing. I do think that the message gets through. My goal is really, if 2 or 3 people walk by me and they see, wow, this guy's like, he's reading, I think, poetry, just like in public. And if that's all they take away from it, and it just puts the idea in their head like, wow, that's something that you can be done. I mean, you know, we see guitar players, of course. We see buskers, musicians. You know, it's even, I love, like, dancers that they go out and do, like, site-specific videos and things in different parts of the city. I think that's part of the fun of New York, is it is such, like, a playground. I mean, especially right now, it's an amusement park with influencers and with TikTok and sort of performative filmmaking everywhere, literally, and sort of the theatrics of just public, like, almost flash mob, personal little, you know, into your TikTok account or whatever, your Instagram. I mean, New York is just a complete, it always has been. It's always been, you know, a sound stage or a studio in a theater, you know, street theater, seeing the drama. That's part of the flaneur thing. That's part of the Baudelaire thing. The modern kind of alienated boulevardier strolling, you know, ambling the city blocks. You witness so many different scenes, other people's lives, like it's theater, like it's a show. That's always been an element. So to add, plus you have, a lot of performers who live here. You have dancers and theater people and musicians and poets, and so you see them working in public and performing in public. I think for me it's also just a sort of a rehearsal, right? Like the Sonny Rollins thing, he'd go out on the bridge. He didn't have anywhere else to rehearse. He went out in the middle of the Williamsburg Bridge, I think, or was it the Manhattan Bridge? And he'd play his saxophone because he could make noise out there, and I think that's so beautiful. And I think that's part of just being an artist in New York, is getting used to things interfering with your particular stream of expression. And so you get imprinted with your environment just like involuntarily, and absorbing that, incorporating that, I think is fun and realistic. It's more of a group project. It's more of a shared thing. You're getting a multiplicity of voices in rather than just your own. That's for me. That's a lot of what I do. Is I go out into the city and I overhear, and I like to misoverhear. It's not necessarily about eavesdropping and sort of like trying to hear what people. It's more just about, for me, I like to put myself in a position where I can hear as many different things happening as once. So if I can hear two bands at once, I'll sit in that place. Like in Washington Square Park is great for this. You can sit on a lawn where you hear somebody's boombox over here with some modern, hip-hop or whatever. And then over here you've got the live band of a drummer and an acoustic or what have you. Maybe even hear a saxophone, who knows. Then you overhear snippets of 3 or 4 conversations. That's New York, and so throwing that on the page, trying to write and transcribe all of the different angles of that, and the kind of jangle of that, the misinterpreting, mishearing, and creating new, interesting, uncliched phrases. Here's one of the experiences I had in Washington Square Park the other day. Not that I want to reinforce this. I didn't take it that seriously because I've been heckled a lot, and the guy didn't really articulate himself. But what I was doing, okay, so I have my PA in my backpack, right, which I'm typically carrying on my back, and I'll just leave it on because it's rechargeable and the battery lasts for like 6 or 7 hours. So a lot of times I just turn it on, and then I can just turn the microphone on off and start talking whenever I want to. So I read at different parts around Washington Square for like 10 or minutes at a time, different benches and stuff. Then I just started walking around the fountain, which I do a lot of the time anyway, past all the different vendors, past the different bands, past all of the people walking around, past all the people different sitting, and I just read while I was walking. So I have my diary open, and I just kind of skim the diary and read phrases as they fit. So every time it's new. Every time it's a different combination of the poem. And it's always interesting, and it's always alive and good, I think. And so I'm like circling. I got into a couple conversations with people. The first one was interesting. Maybe I'll go into that in a minute. And I'm just reading. I'm reading into my microphone while I'm walking through all of these people. Because like I said, I really just want, if people hear 2 or 3 things that I say, or even if they see me, like, oh, this guy's like walking around reading his poetry, huh? Washington Square Park is really I'm getting more used and more comfortable. I feel like I'm, becoming more like I work there. I'm just another one of the people that works. It's my third place, really. And it's a great studio. There's this amazing dancer every day. She's got a very ceremonial location. She's between the fountain, right in line with the arch and Fifth Avenue. She sets up a piece of paper with like this black paint and a bowl. She pours it out of a bowl, and she dances for like 6-7 hours. Beautiful, beautiful music. That's her studio. That's her stage. What an amazing venue. And people watch, all day. People are walking by, standing, watching for 5 or 10 minutes. I'm trying to work up to that. Dance is great for it because it's non-verbal, but so I'm just walking around and I'm just trying to contribute to the creative atmosphere, and this is my way of doing it. It's just like I'm sending out, what I think is kind of a high frequency thought wave. And so if 20-year-old NYU kids see it and they go, oh, interesting, you can do that. Just like, you see people on bikes all the time. People ride by you on bikes with stereos playing music. Like they've got their personal radio station. So I just thought, well, why not just read my poetry? I'll do the same thing, but I'll read my poetry. Or the other thing I've been doing, right, on my way to the readings is, because I've got the PA on my back anyway, and it's Bluetooth, so I can hook my phone up to it wirelessly. So I Bluetooth my phone to the PA, and I play my voice memos as I'm riding my scooter. So once again, I'm kind of sprinkling my fairy dust along the whole route of where I'm traveling via playing it aloud, like one of these guys driving around playing music on a boombox or whatever. Except I'm playing my diary, basically things like this, or poetic recitations. I recorded myself reading a bunch of poems that I like by other poets the other day, so I was playing that as I rode around. So, if I'm riding by and I'm stopped at a crosswalk next to somebody for 3 seconds, and they hear some poetry, they might be like, that's kind of weird. I've never heard that before. It's like, I remember as a kid, and I'm sure a lot of people have done this, but U2 they rented a truck, a flatbed truck, and they set up all their equipment on the back of the truck, and they drove around New York City, right, playing on the truck. And I'm sure, like I said, they're not the first people that have done that, but I've always wanted to do that. So this is kind of like my version of that. I want to get a headset microphone, so as I'm driving my scooter, I can just perform and talk and monologue and comment on what I see. But for the time being, if I can pre-record like my poetry, or I should have been audio recording all these readings, because they have been good and they've all been site specific. I literally haven't recorded anything, sadly. But they were meant to be kind of like live performance. They're meant to be like Shakespeare in the Park. Like, this is live theater. They're ceremonial. They're not meant necessarily for they're not first and foremost to be digitally, recorded or whatever, taken down, sucked into the fucking circuit board. So, I'm building up to I'm getting better at it. I'm getting more and more confident at it. But, okay, so I'm walking around Washington Square Park, and first I stopped and I talked to this one guy. I'll go into that in a minute. But the second guy who stopped me, as I'm walking around, certain people would just be like, oh, are you reading your poem? So the second guy that stopped me, he was like, are you reading your poetry? I was like, yeah. And he was like, read me something. And so I started reading whatever I was reading, and it was good. It was, like, pretty fire. And then I don't remember, I stopped. He seemed like he liked it. I think he really liked it. And then I stopped, and I kind of asked him what he thought or whatever. And he's like, I forget exactly what he said, but he was like, yeah, I like it, or blah, 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 whatever, because it's, like, really sucky, but it's also cliche. Something like that. He used the word cliche, and he used the word, like, shitty, or something to that effect. Sucky. Like, it sucks, but it's also, like, really... So I was like, I was trying to be, like, buoyant and positive and shit about it, and be like, oh, yeah, I get it. But then I was like, oh, what do you mean? And he was, and I could tell it kind of threw him for a second, because I think he got panicked, because I think he thought he said something mean, and maybe he didn't mean to. I don't know. I couldn't tell what he was was he trying to troll me? I couldn't tell. But then I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, well, he was like, well, I just mean, what do you mean? And he kind of threw it back at me, and I was like, well, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, I'm constantly trying to, like, my work is sort of about, like, falling down the stairs with perfect grace and equanimity, like Cart Crane says, you know, like, you're sort of clumsily swerving off the expected thing, but you're creating, if you actually listen to it, you're creating, like, a deeper, more interesting language art and kind of statement and phraseology. But you have to, I don't know, maybe I'm too old-fashioned, maybe I'm just dad style, I don't know. But after that, I read it, and then he was like, okay, read something else. And, like, it's my diary. I don't really have, like, pieces, you know? Like, the point of what I'm doing is, like, I just go out in public, and I just sort of, like, flow through it. And I assemble it. Like, there are stops and starts that come organically. And there is even, like, because I'm reading, like, the best stuff in a way that feels very natural and right at the time, it does kind of naturally fall into compositions in a good way. But doing that all of a sudden for another person who just told me that my shit sucks and it's cliche was kind of like, oh God, now I got to read something to this guy that he's like, I don't know, he kind of looked like he was maybe in an MFA program. He had like some style, but it was like, I couldn't tell. I don't know. We didn't get that far. So I read another thing and it was like very flat. I don't know. I just felt like, how am I going to do this? This guy just insulted me, and like it took it from being like, because I was like, my intention was not to have people stop me and be like, hey, read me a poem. Because I feel like with poetry shit, people are always looking for something that's very Hallmark, you know, and like that's just not what I'm doing. It's just like me going out and playing a saxophone, you know, I'm just blowing. Like, do you really want, hey, play your saxophone in my face? Like, no, it's meant that, like, it's part of the ambiance, it's part of the atmosphere, and it's also, like, if you listen to it, it's you can follow it, and it's worth listening to, you know? But it's also just a mode of composition, it's flow state, it's presence, it's timbre, it's sound, it's music. It's like birds. It's like what birds do. I'm doing what birds do. Birds sit on a branch and they chirp all day. They sing songs. That's what I'm doing. Except in human language, we have articulations, we have figurative thoughts, and, you know, concrete details and declarative statements and vowels and consonants and whatnot. I was thinking about how English language is very box-like. It's very container. There's consonants on the end and vowels in the middle. Everything is sealed. It's like a room with an emptiness. Vowels are kind of a space of language, and consonants are kind of walls. But, you know, and it's the village. I'm 36. I'm a lot older than these fucking kids. Like, it's weird for me to try to relate to them, so I just go and be kind of public sculpture. And I'm not trying to, like, enforce, like, I'm not a comedian, like, hey, everybody, I'm out here doing, like, a public performance. In a certain way, I don't want to draw that much attention to myself, because I don't want the police to come up to me and be like, well, do you have because I think with an amplifier, you technically do have to have a permit. I want to be, like, stealthy enough that I can just, like I said, if I just turn the microphone off, nobody even knows I even have a speaker or anything. I mean, I'm not that loud. I'm not really sure. You can probably hear me within, like, a 20-foot radius, maybe. Like, it's not so loud that, like, it's going to shake the whole block. But if you're walking by, like, it's going to stick out. You're going to be like, what's that guy's like talking into a microphone? And he's not a comedian, and he's not, what is he doing? So, I don't know. Like, that wasn't, like I said, I've been heckled a lot of times. And, like, I don't know. I wasn't really doing it with the intention of, like, getting some kind of, like, super approval from people. It's more just like I'm positing this stuff to just show you that you can do this. And, like, if you listen to what I'm saying, like, it might further your sense of possibility. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not just trying to write some poem that's going to win some prize or get a bunch of applause or something. So the first guy that came up and talked to me as I was circulating with my PA was really a weird conversation. I was walking on the east side, and I had my PA, and I'm reading shit, and this guy comes up next to me, this white guy. He kind of looked like my friend Sergio from college. And he's like, "Are you reading your poetry?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I kept talking in the microphone. And I, like, kept reading, kind of, and we started having a conversation, but I was still talking in the microphone. He's like, "You know you're talking in the microphone." I was like, "Yeah, I know." Because I thought it was just kind of interesting. And there were a lot of people, you know. It was like, I was just trying to, like, show that that's possible and, I don't know, take it further. And suddenly this guy's interacting with me, so I thought, should I start to interview him? I'm a little wary. I don't want other people to speak into my microphone because I don't want their germs. So I don't really hold the microphone in anybody's face. And this guy may have been an anti-vaxxer. I don't know. Our conversation started off, I think we started talking about film. He just was very, he said, he basically hated all recent films. And I didn't really know that this was such a cliche, but I see this on TikTok a lot. He was maybe your classic film bro. He said Orson Welles and Citizen Kane was his favorite movie. And all movies, I asked him about, did he like A24? And he was like, ugh, no. He said he worked, and the reason why this is significant is because he said he worked for some studio. He was a script reader. He's from LA. I think he went to USC, or I don't remember where he went to college. He went someplace where I asked him, like, why he did this job. He said he hated it. He hated Hollywood. He wanted to quit. He was going to get out of it. This is in Washington Square Park, so he lives in New York. I don't know. He's from LA, though. And he said, and I don't know if this is true, but this is what he claimed. Because I've always heard, right, like, I'm interested in this. I've always heard script readers, like, you're supposed to, like, they get all the scripts, and they sort of break it down to their bosses or whatever about how marketable it is and blah, blah, blah. But my question was, what were the standards? Particularly now is like, you know, my understanding of it is it has something to do with like McKee kind of shit, story mechanics, blah, blah, blah. So I asked this guy, and he's like, no, it's all, he said something outrageous about Hillary Clinton and how Hillary was involved with this process. She like meets with the fucking like studio executives and shit. And they decide, and so his job is to read these scripts and assign points based on basically how much like multiculturalism and whatnot there is. He assigns things points based on like, well, I don't even know how LGBTQ or how woke or how, you know, multicultural, and so they get points for that. I don't know if this is true or not. This is what the guy was complaining. This is why he was going to quit, because it's all bullshit. The entertainment industry is rigged and blah, blah, blah. And I don't remember exactly, like this was Friday, it's Tuesday now. Then he started asking me about political stuff, and he was like talking about, he was like, once he discovered I was a liberal or whatever, he was like a leftist. He was like, why do you like the liberals more? And I didn't really know what to say, but I was like, well, I feel like they're not as dangerous. he was like, you need to go back to Ohio, and like the people with the guns, they know what's up. They know what's going to happen. They'll take care of you. He was like, you think the liberals are less dangerous? Because he's like, he thinks that, then we got into the pandemic. He's like, he thinks that it was created in a lab in Wuhan, and the vaccine is the disease. That's what I don't get. Like, I don't know exactly what the fuck anti-vaxxers believe, but clearly, just statistically, we know that the vaccine is not what's killing people. Like, COVID is a real thing. The vaccine is saving people from what I've seen. I know people who have had it, they had the vaccine, they survived. Like, whether or not it was started in a fucking lab in Wuhan, China, I don't really know. But I'm willing to believe it's perfectly within the realm of possibility to me that it's from a wet market, right? That sounds like probably what happened. It doesn't, this idea that it is from a lab and it escaped or something, or this is loaded with like political and racial biases and connotations. It's very anti-China. It's very like trying to stoke agitation between the two. And it just preys on conspiracy theories and like Hollywood-addled thinking that a lot of Americans, like this guy, fall victim to. I mean, this guy was not interesting at all. He was a film bro. He hated any movie. He said something about like he hated every movie after, I don't even remember, 1990 or something. And it was like, are you insane? Like, I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of the A24 movies, but like it seems like what they're doing is kind of interesting. I'm not anywhere near as close-minded as that guy. I would see recent movies. It's just like I don't either have the money typically or just like the medium or time, you know, there's all these paywalls. It's like you got to have so many subscription or you got to go to the theater. It's just like I just don't see a lot of stuff, you know. There's more important shit to do. I don't know. But the idea that the vaccine is part of some kind of massive depopulation campaign is absurd to me. Like, these people think what? That like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, we're all just going to start dropping dead like mysteriously? Like, there's a lot of vaccines for a lot of different things. The mRNA technology is new. I understand maybe people are like a little bit like it's a new thing, they don't understand it, but like vaccines have been around for a long fucking time. It's not like this is some kind of new, oh my god, they're launching digital surveillance into us or something. Like, I just don't know what these people think is happening. Like, it alters your DNA or something. That's what they think. Like, I don't know. To me, okay, if there's some idea like it alters your, it's playing God or it like alters your soul, I'm not that skeptical of it. It seems perfectly within the realm of possibility that like they developed it. I mean, the thing that's nuts about it to me is the same fucking people who are like skeptical, who are like, I'm not taking the vaccine. All day I see every fucking day on TV are commercials for very like dubious, probably incredibly dangerous, like commercials on TV for prescription drugs that like, you know, normal people don't have these fucking problems. Like Kesimpta or whatever the fuck this stuff is. It's like, it's a medicine show. It's just like, they should not be advertising for prescription fucking drugs. And the side effects are unbelievable. There's just one, it's for like some kind of skin thing. Eczema or something. And they said, I forget, perineum. Your taint. It says you can get a life-threatening, you know, at the end of the commercial, and they kind of real fast, like fine print, where they read it and like that, may cause side effects, blah, 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 blah. It says it may, call your doctor immediately if you get an infection in your perineum. You can get a life-threatening infection in your perineum. This is the fucking area between your fucking nutsack and your anus. The last place you want a life-threatening infection. This is a potential side effect of this. I don't even know what the drug does. Like I said, I think it's supposed to get rid of like eczema or something. If you take 2 doses, but it's like there potentially could be massive side effects. Nausea, all of these drugs, right? And yet people are reluctant to take the vaccine, which in extremely rare cases might cause, this or that sort of very routine things. So I don't know. It's hard to tell which way is up in a certain way because these people have fucked up the truth so much. But just this guy, it's just like this guy's mind was so polluted, I asked him, I was like, are you red-pilled? What's going on here, he liked, I don't know if he liked Trump, but like he thought Trump was like a disruptor. He thought Trump was not on the side of the pedophile, Pizzagate, Hillary's emails. He said something about how he'd read a lot of Hillary's emails, and there's a lot of damning shit in there. And it's like, I think he was like kind of an Alex Jones. Just complete toxic masculinity, like by the book, So this guy, our conversation started off promising. He was asking me, oh, you're reading your poetry? I thought maybe like he was like maybe a smart person or a literary person or something, but I guess not. I forget how the conversation ended, but I didn't really take his contact information or anything. I'm always down to just like talk to people and just find out what they're about and stuff. If I run into him again, I run into him again. It's what's cool about Washington Square Park. It's just like meeting people, freely mingling. It's maybe, I don't know, the best place in New York City to do that, actually, in a way. I think people who go there might be open to that or game for that, in a way. I don't know if you'd find that anywhere else. Maybe that's why the police are so eager to, like, shut it down and shit, because they know it could explode into something really beautiful and cool if they let it grow and develop. So, I don't know. Those were just the 2 people that sort of stopped me to ask me to read them something, the whack job, right-wing, film bro, toxic masculine, just cliche. It's like, dude, were you created by like a fucking algorithm or a Reddit forum or something? Because literally, just like, I feel like you're like just a series of hashtags. The way that you think, I don't know. I don't even know what to fucking believe. Is Hillary a fucking child molester? I don't know. The other thing with the Epstein thing is I just feel like people are obsessed with him in a way that it's like, anything you give attention to, you give, like these women that show up at his fucking townhouse and shit. It's like, they're obsessed with their abuser, or like this one, Dasha, whatever, made a fucking movie about the guy. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, I mean, obviously there needs to be justice, but it's always about him. It's always about his fucking townhouse, his fucking, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, you don't pay, guys, they're willing to dismiss any number of guys and never even think about him or pay any attention to him again. It's like, and so they dwell on this guy that, like, it empowers something to give it. That's what we saw with Trump, right? It's just like even though all the stories in the media were bad, it didn't matter because his name was everywhere. Like, I don't know. I think they go for the most toxic guys. It's like the ultimate I can fix him thing. Like, oh, Epstein, I could fix him. I can be the one. He's the ultimate, like, I don't know, true crime podcast. kind of mindset or case or whatever. Don't think about him. Don't talk about him. Talk about Frankly Fabulous. Worry about show up at Frankly Fabulous's house. You know, make a movie about Frankly Fabulous, for Christ's sake. Fuck him. He's a goddamn criminal. He's evil. Should never speak his name. He's dead. Or I don't know. He's not actually dead, you know. He's not actually dead. I mean, did we see the body? I totally believe they'd get his ass out of there. Like, that seems completely plausible to me. I mean, they probably whacked him because they didn't want him to talk, but, like, maybe they just jettisoned him right out of there and... Oh, God, this is not really that related, but the other fucking thing... Oh, God, I was reading about... Well, I don't want to get into this. It's too dark. It's another thing of just, like, where the trust goes, and it's very misguided, and there's a lot of predators out there in high positions. This guy, I saw it on TikTok. This guy, oh, man, I can't even talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. There's other shit to talk about. Yeah. Well, okay, here's one thing. So Saturday, okay, I went down to fucking southern tip of Manhattan. So Friday, I was in Washington Square. That's basically... I went down there with two objectives. To buy weed, because it's basically a big weed store. And I needed some. And I thought... You know, while I'm down there, I'll perform, and so that'll be my day. So that's what I did. And then Saturday, I thought, I was down at Zuccotti and at Ground Zero a couple times on September 11th and in the 10th anniversary of Occupy Wall Street. And I even had my fucking PA. I just didn't perform because there were cops and stuff. Which that was kind of a missed opportunity, especially, you know, the ritual kind of point of the whole thing. But I did go back Saturday. I felt like it was important to do some readings at Zuccotti because it was this time of year. Occupy was from, you know, sometime kind of mid-September to like Halloween-ish. It was kind of over by Halloween, I'd say, sometime around that point. It snowed, I think, that year on Halloween. And I think by that point it had been evicted. But it was this time of year 10 years ago. Kind of hard to believe, but also kind of not. So I went down there on my scooter. Like I said, first I started at the southern tip of Manhattan. Then I went over to that fort. Then over by where the ferries load. And I read a bunch of different, you know. Every time I go through all my material. I read through my whole notebook. So that's a couple hours. You know, most of these days when I'm out, I'm doing a couple hours of readings. Which, like was saying before, is like... it's a lot more performing time than I certainly ever get at an open mic, and probably about as many people are seeing me. You know, at an open mic, there might be 20, 30 people maybe, but there might be 5, you know, or 10 or something. So if I'm in public in Washington Square Park, you know, 20 or 30 people are definitely going to walk by. Or Central Park, like I started in Central Park by the fountain and stuff. And I also, you know, I've got my scooter, and I just want to get outside. I want to see Manhattan. I want to tour. This is my tour. I made these posters and shit. the Frankly Fabulous Summer Tour, so I wanted to make good on that promise. I didn't just want to like, oh, I was going to do this tour and I chickened out. It's like, I have done it. Now, granted, like, these haven't been the most show-type shows I've ever done where I'm like, okay, guys, like, 8 o'clock tonight, I'm going to do a show at the fucking Brooklyn Bridge or something. In a certain way, I'm still in previews. Like, that's the thing about Broadway is they do rehearsals, then they do out-of-town tryouts, then they do previews before their opening night. The previews are on fucking Broadway. So, like, in a certain way, I'm still in rehearsals and out-of-town tryouts and whatnot. I really haven't even premiered. The show is not really... I'd like to incorporate movement more and make it more of a spontaneous... I'd like to get a point where I can do this in person in, like, Washington Square Park, but mixed with, like, kind of a movement expression as well, and poetry, and maybe some music and whatnot, and interviews and things. And I'm getting there. I'm getting more confident. I'm getting closer, Going to all these places and doing it and seeing that the different reactions and that it's cool. No one is going to fucking, other than telling you you're sucky and cliche, you're not going to get arrested or whatever. So, and I've also got this map. I've got this, this great map of Manhattan. I've been Xing on the map. That's very satisfying. All the different locations. So I'm sort of looking at it. It's almost like I'm fucking like George Washington or something, planning the Revolutionary War battle. I'm looking at the terrain of Manhattan. I'm thinking, okay, where have I not gone yet? And like that Mount Tamalpais thing, I'm kind of trying to like ceremonially create an enchanted kind of ring. If I can do recitations, like I said, I've been north in Central Park, a bunch of places, the Ramble, Bethesda Fountain, Conservatory Water, the Great Lawn, Sheep's Meadow, tons of places up there. And then West Side Park, Times Square I've done. The other day I was in Herald Square. I read at a couple places over there. I read by the Empire State Building. It was so weird because I went over there because I just wanted to get something to eat, and I had my PA, and I was smoking, just looking up at the base of the Empire State Building, because standing right next to it and looking up at it, it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, if you think about the size of the Great Pyramids, and then you think about this thing, like, this is our Great Pyramid in Manhattan. This was the thing they built. I think it probably is just, like, the purest distillation of, like, New York brand. Like, Empire State Building is right in the middle of New York, 34th, 5th Avenue, and it just in one building, let's say, it's that. Absolutely. Like, that's the icon. That's the zenith. That's the image of New York City, capital of the world, 20th century, capital of the 20th century, like King Kong. And so I'm thinking this as I'm standing there looking at it. I'm like, oh, I should get the microphone out and I should say it. So I kind of did, I wasn't super, like, free about it. I'm just out there doing it by myself. There's no camera crew or anything. So it's like, it's a little of a weird thing to be doing with a microphone. Plus, it's the Empire State Building. There's cops around and shit. So I'm like, not trying to cause too much attention to myself. And I'm reading shit and people are walking by and stuff. Once again, it's just a ceremonial thing. It's like, this is the Empire State Building. This is New York. This is Warhol, the fucking movie. What's it called? The movie with the Empire State Building. Is it called Empire or what's it called? I don't know. King Kong, right? Fucking Sleepless in Seattle. I mean, there's so many fucking things tied to the Empire State Building. And just the way it looks and stuff, like. And then I'm watching fucking How I Met Your Mother later, a couple days later or something, as I'm rolling one. And there's a scene where fucking Ted, they talk about how he goes and he talks to the Empire State Building. He's going to move to Chicago, and they're talking about things he'll miss about New York. She's like, you love to go and talk to the Empire State Building when you're sad. And I was like, oh, and there's a cutaway to him, like, you know, hugging the Empire State Building. I'm like, oh my God. Because I don't know. I've had the impression before that, like, that character is sort of a version of me, right? I'm sure there's a lot of guys that feel that way. Ted on How I Met Your Mother is like, I don't know. The red cowboy boot thing, I don't know. A lot of things. I have a Ted resemblance in a certain way, unfortunately. I'm ashamed to admit, but, you know, he's kind of the literary romantic fuckboy. Protagonist, alter ego of the creators, probably. The sad young literary man, you know, at the heart of the thing. Who probably was one of the co-creators, you know, the writers of the show. So then I went over to Herald Square, read some over there, because there's always those Jesus people over there. Just like, and they have headsets and microphones, and they're just like ranting about Jesus and God everywhere all the time. So I thought, I need to counterbalance this. So there's like these like fucking stones. They're almost like the stone. Who's the guy that gets chained to a stone? Or Prometheus? Or like, who is it? Arachne? Who gets fucking chained? Who's the woman that gets chained to the stone? Or Ariadne? Or I think it starts with an A. Adriatic. Adriana. She gets chained to the stone. I don't know. So they have these big stones like on the crosswalk on 34th and Broadway. And so I was like sitting on the stone, and I had my PA in my backpack, and I was reading. So all these people are pouring, you know, it's rush hour. All these people are pouring by me and waiting for the light and shit. So, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of people are walking by me as I'm reading. Right in the middle of the fucking human stream, you know. I'm on this stone reading. In the middle of 34th Street. Right by Macy's. I was right up front of Macy's. I found this one place, because the bike path on Broadway is really great. And it goes right by Macy's. And Macy's has this little plaza in front of it. Because a lot of Broadway is just pedestrian now. In a weird way. Where there's just like tables and kind of like nice place you can sit. And so right in front of Macy's, there's like that. Where a bunch of people are sitting, you know, just hanging out, checking their phones or whatever. And then the bike path. And then like this gated park. But sort of like there's like a lamppost. And like a little cove, like a little cubby, sliced like directly like on the other side of the bike path. It's the only thing jutting into the fence on the other side, and there's like a lamppost and a chair, and it was just like big enough for one person. So I sat there, kind of cut off from like the plaza by the bike path, but all these people are like riding their bikes by, right? And I'm reading there. So there's all these, you know, there's like a gate and like all these trees and leaves behind me and stuff, and a lamppost. And the park, you know, there's like whatever that park is, Father McCovey Square or whatever it is. And I'm in this little cove, like reading, and all these people on bikes are, you know, like they might hear a sentence I say as they ride by, you know. And then the people in the fucking plaza can kind of hear what I'm saying. So that was kind of an interesting place. I felt comfortable there. So I read there for probably half an hour or so. I read a lot of stuff there. I don't even remember. But, you know, some people walked by and they thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. I'm making it into a thing, you know. If maybe I'll put in the Frankly Fabulous costume and do it and jazz it up. And like I said, make it more of a physical and call more attention to myself. I'm getting more confident doing that. But I do think it's a great form of practice and rehearsal because, like, I can literally go do this anytime, anywhere I want. I don't have to go to a venue. I don't have to get a gig. I don't have to sign up at an open mic and wait through a bunch of other people. I mean, particularly now with COVID, right? Like, it still feels good to be outside and, like, I'm not that comfortable going to indoor venues all the time. And this I can do literally every day. This is basically what I did all month. It's been a big physical effort, I gotta say. Like, carrying the fucking scooter downstairs, trucking all over town. You know, once I get kind of the part of town where I want to perform, I turn the scooter off and I'm walking. I'll walk 3 miles, pushing the fucking scooter with my backpack. You know, I turn my scooter off in Central Park. I'll walk, you know, from 104th Street to the south part, walking, you know, circling back. Because the thing about the scooter is if you turn it off, every time you turn it off and turn it on, it uses a shitload of battery. So I can really only turn it on and turn it off like once, or else I won't be able to get home. So I end up having to walk a lot. So it's just, these are day-long things, and it's good to be outside, absorbing the sun, absorbing these different storied kind of locations. Like I said, digesting the landscape, Manhattan. You know, I'm really lucky to be here in kind of a central location. I'll probably never get who knows if I'll ever get another opportunity like this in my life. So this is my chance to really take it all in and, you know, be present in these places. I don't think there's a lot of people who have the opportunity to perform in this way in New York right now. Like, there's just not as many kind of artists that are just like not working for some kind of bottom line where they can just go out like the woman who dances in the park, or, you know, the poets who write in the park, or you know, people who play their saxophones in Central Park, or jazz bands out playing, you know, trios or whatever, playing in different parks, break dancers. You know, it kind of evolved out of this myth I've been chasing and sort of studying and trying to become and inherit, this sort of street poet thing, right? Which, I don't know if it was born in the Village, but like a lot of my heroes of the Village, Jack Michelin or Jack Hirschman or Bob Kaufman or Maxwell Bodenheim or even Taylor Mead, or, you know, the Beats to some extent, Kerouac, they were definitely habitues of the West Village, Washington Square Park, McDougal Street, Bleecker, you know, the whole Hudson left bank thing that doesn't really exist anymore. Now it's Finance Bros and NYU kids. NYU kids are not really independent enough or like developed enough to like soar on a adult mature level, like doing this kind of work. I don't think like the street theater that I've seen NYU kids doing and things, or jazz bands or whatnot, it's cool. It's not like they don't get attention and stuff, but I don't know. I think there's a lack of serious kind of like street work being done. It's always like a corporate sponsored thing or some kind of theater program, you know, some kind of NYU kids doing something. A lot of the performance I've been going to in the gardens in the East Village have had a lot of integrity and spirit, and they feel like real wild and like full of life. You know, Washington Square Park is more like a marketplace. There's a lot of fashion. A lot of people are selling clothes. A lot of artists sell their paintings there. You know, for like kind of insta entrepreneurs. You know, that's something that was very encouraged in our generation. I think it has taken. I think a lot of people, like, I mean, Washington Square Park, all these people are starting their own businesses, selling their work. A lot of people selling weed, of course. But me going out and reading, and I'd like to sell books and pamphlets and things. This is one reason why I would really like to stay through the end of next year, because I feel like I'm only getting started. I'm just now getting comfortable, and the season is kind of ending I'd love to be able to pick up again in the spring and keep going through next season, because I really think by this time next year, I really think I'll be firing on all cylinders and I'll be ready to fly. Next spring feels like very like close. It just feels like, man, like I'm just getting started, after the pandemic kind of like hibernation and just sort of like slow like awakening from that. This summer, going from like such extreme isolation and solitude and independence, and also just like all of like the poisonous thinking I was undergoing in that situation, it's taken March, April, May, June, July, August, September, it's taken that long to just like, okay, now it sort of feels like I'm picking up where I left off in 2017. When I started going out with my ex was around this time, 2017, September, October, and it really changed the track I was on. And this feels weird. It feels like I'm kind of picking up, like, events at the project are starting again. I'm going to film something tomorrow. And my glasses broke. I was in Washington Square. Was that Friday? That was Wednesday. I started wearing those glasses in March 2018, right after I moved out of the Sludge. And before, I had glasses exactly like this. This was all my scenes from my life and all the Sludge. I had glasses exactly like this. And then I started wearing those kind of like Fellini glasses that were like my kind of arty, psychedelic, this guy's, high all the time glasses. And I don't really think they were the right shape for my face, even though I did love those glasses. I thought they were great. But I'm standing in fucking Washington Square Park, and they've been falling off my face, and just like, I've been wanting to get contacts, or I don't even know. I've been trying to find a way out of these glasses, and I just haven't been able to do it. This is hard for me, like haircuts, this kind of shit. I have to have like a reason, or something has to happen. But I haven't been able to get out of these glasses. And I'm standing there in Washington Square Park on Wednesday, and it was very hard to like engage with people. I was trying to buy weed, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't go up to people and have conversations. So I ended up in the park all day. I didn't have my PA that day, so I wasted the whole day. If I had my PA, it would have been great, because I could have been reading and shit. But I'm just there, just like literally just like walking around, not talking to anybody, staring at shit, people watching basically. And I'm standing on the sort of southeastern side of the park, and I'm just kind of like staring into the space, just like, where am I going to buy weed? I got to find weed somehow. And all of a sudden, boom, I get hit right in the fucking center of my face, right in the nose, with this football. Bam! And my glasses fly off, and they broke right at the corner. The fucking, plastic snapped. And so the guy comes over, he's like, oh man, sorry, are you okay? It was fine. It didn't hurt at all, honestly. It really didn't hurt at all. It was not a big deal. And the glasses broke. So I kind of walked around Washington Square Park with my glasses fucking jacked up for a couple hours, and then I sadly, dragged my ass home. And I started wearing these glasses again. So I'm kind of, once again, I haven't really worn these since 2017, so they're maybe better for my face shape. And just the weed I've been getting is like way less potent. So I like smoke a lot of it, and I just don't even feel high at all. Like this week, I bought this, because Washington Square, you find a lot of 8s for $25, which you get what you pay for, I guess. But it kind of pisses me off, because I just don't feel, it's so watered down feeling to me. But at the same time, I'm kind of more functional. I'm able to text people, but I also, in certain ways, maybe I'm not as creative. My TikToks have not been as wild. The weed I had before, I was just like blown a lot. It was very high THC content, so I think my tolerance is very high. And I don't know how to readjust, really. But I don't know. You gain a little and you lose a little with each, right? Next time I'm going to buy more potent shit, I'll tell you that. So yeah, my fucking glass is broken shit. And then Sunday was Brooklyn Book Festival, which was a whole other thing. I mean, like I said, Saturday I was reading Into the Sunset into fucking Liberty Island. You know, there's a Statue of Liberty, so I read my poems as the sun was going down. I think Friday and Saturday I just ended up in situations where, like, the sunsets were just so compelling I just had to stay on the coast of the island, you know, by the river. I've been just trying to soak up the Hudson and the color palette, the beautiful light. This was the other thing. I read this Eileen Miles essay that I've had on my, I think they published it on LitHub September 21st or something, so I've had it up for a couple weeks. I just haven't read it. And it had this wonderful thing about how Manhattan is between two bands of, you know, the rivers. If you think about it, they really just reflect the sky over the city. So being in Manhattan, you're in this like valley of light or something in a way. And so the light here, I think in the article, maybe they even call it the most beautiful light in the world. But this is another thing, is Eileen Miles has been doing this protest about Save East River Park, and I've been meaning to go, but I've, you know, out of a combination of just kind of like shyness and, you know, I've been doing this has been a whole project in and of itself, just doing these kind of public performances, like I said, getting around Manhattan, getting the scooter up and down the 4 flights of stairs, all of it. It's you know, smoking and insane shitloads of weed. You know, it's been a full-time project. It's been my September. It's been my run. This is my Shakespeare in the Park. This is my finale. This is my postseason, my October Classic, and I will continue to do it as long as the weather permits. I'd like to keep doing it definitely through Halloween, you know. There's definitely more places I'd like to go. But, so Eileen Miles is doing these, you know, a lot of days they're in East River Park. So every day this week they're going to be in City Hall from 9 to 6 because they're staging a protest on behalf. So they want people to come down. So I need to go down there. You know, I've just been kind of, like I said, I've been avoiding it. It's just such an obvious thing that I need to do. And it's so cool that they're doing that and they're just so present. Like this major artist, you can just go and, you know, they're teaching they're doing like a poetry day today where they have an open mic with like a bullhorn. It really would be the perfect thing for me to go do, but I was just so wiped yesterday and today because I went so hard. I was, like I said, I went Friday, Saturday, Sunday last week. And they were big days. I mean, Friday I was there all day from 1 or 2 p.m. till 8 or 9. Saturday, same fucking thing, you know. I was there from 3, 4 until 8 or 9. And then Sunday was Brooklyn Book Festival, which was another huge, one of the biggest days of the year for me. And, well, the other thing with Eileen Miles I want to get to real fast is, so I did start reading this article. It's all about Joan Mitchell, who I follow a few Twitter accounts, or Instagram and Twitter accounts of Joan Mitchell's paintings, because I just love it, because it's abstract expressionist, but it's colorful, you know, and it's got a beauty like, you know, like a Pollock. Typically the color scheme, black, gray, yellow, it's kind of these masculine or like dark, angry, kind of brooding. A lot of abstract expressionism has that kind of feel. Franz Klein. I like Hans Hofmann. He has more of like kind of a bright color scheme, but these Joan Mitchell paintings, for lack of a better word, I mean, I hate to use this word, but like maybe they're more feminine. There's more pink, like this painting, City Landscapes. It's pink, yellow. It's got some like kind of like bluish green. What is that color? A little bit of orange, some kind of darker reds, but some really nice pink, creamy kind of white. Different kind of whites. Not a whole lot of gray, really. Some blacks. And it is like an abstract expressionist kind of, but the strokes are different. It's not drip. It's more like maybe a Lee Krasner or there's some de Kooning kind of elements to it, I guess. But it's not figurative. It's more about the dance. Beautiful. I love it. To me, it's as good, if not better, I would say, than Jackson Pollock. But I don't know that much about Joan Mitchell, and this article is sort of all about the places she lived in the West Village, more or less. So it's a lot. The thing that immediately struck me today was that I was reading this passage. It was just kind of queued up on the scroll. Greenwich Avenue's sidewalk is interrupted by grills venting the subway below, and the rumble of the trains is a lot of what you know about this street apart from its angle. Greenwich Ave always veering always, which is useful since everything else, Charles Perry, comes off of it and it's heading east. So this street, Greenwich Ave, this has been in my poetics, my poetry. It's in city life. I say Greenwich Ave is the fastest way home. Is that in the Don Yorty blog poem? I think it is. And also these streets, Charles Perry, that's in the poem. Cafe Life has that list of streets. Eileen Myles typically writes about the East Village my favorite writer, the greatest writer alive. And so it's cool, and also just sort of, it's one of these things I've always felt, I don't know, such a kind of like, I don't know. It's such a deep connection for me because I have always felt like, I don't know, a significant like synchronicity or like coincidental kind of quality. A lot of times when I read Eileen Myles' writing, it's like directly relating to something that I'm interested in or working on right now. So this thing about Greenwich Ave, in the West Village, and it goes on to talk about, right, like this women's house of detention comes up in so many things that I've been reading recently. Everything that I've been reading recently talks about this. There was a women's house of detention, right? Like, how fucking insane. I thought it was the Jefferson Market Library. I don't think it's the same building. I think they tore the building down that it was in, but it was next to it. I think probably where that garden is now, which, that's one of the central motifs of my work this summer has been that Jefferson Market Library Tower and the E.E. Cummings Patchen Place, that whole quadrangle, and primarily kind of the west coast of Manhattan and the West Village in particular has been kind of my project and my study and my passion and my residency since I've been here, the past 6 months. I've been doing the west side of Manhattan on my scooter, right, like going up to Central Park, taking the Henry Hudson Parkway, reading in the park up there, going to Zabar's. I work at Columbia, so hopefully I'll be going back there soon. Going to Little Island to see performances, going to the galleries over there. Seinfeld, that fucking tower where they, Larry David lived, is on 9th and 43rd and all of that, But also downtown too, Hudson and Greenwich Street. I've been riding up all through that Tribeca area. Is very interesting. All those streets. I can't think of any of their names right now. Not Van Dam, but there's a very interesting nooks and crannies over there. Over kind of by Tribeca Grill and stuff, Mr. Chow's. And then downtown, right, of course, too, but like the whole West Coast, predominantly kind of the West Village and the the White Horse Tavern kind of area, the Palazzo Chupi kind of area, the West Beth kind of area, the quality of light over there, and just kind of walking around that kind of like beer-soaked sailor's village. It's just the most gorgeous place on earth. I'm just obsessed with it. I love it. And so my work has been kind of like trying to absorb the psychic energy, the light, the history, the spirits, the poetry, the work, the artists. I'm just so lucky to just be able to soak this all in. I want to keep it going, as long as I can. And there's a thing about a scooter. She mentioned a scooter in here, or they mentioned a scooter. I'm sorry. Stables. That's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. The cobblestone streets. Greenwich Avenue must have been cobblestoned. And just all these kind of different, the artists living in the West Village, the fact that they could do that, There's also kind of an interesting Chicago connection in this, which is not really related, but it's an interesting part of the article. And just the idea, the quality of light in the city, So, biography, studying the biographies of the poets who lived here, because if it's as important to live poetically as it is to write poems, then their lives, I think, are works of art and are worth studying as if they were part of their works, their oeuvre, their complete. The poem is just kind of like the word crystallization of the adventure, the magic, that in order to become the magician, I think the poet needs to do things and see things and experience energies that teach them form, that give them substance, that give them content. And so me going out and doing this, it is hard for me to directly, face certain things. So this is maybe a diversionary tactic. Like, what am I really doing? No one is seeing any of this, really. No one's hearing any of this. This is not really having any kind of effect. I'm not making any money. I'm not recording it even. I mean, it's a lot of time and effort for something that, like, this is maybe, I don't know. It feels like maybe my last big thing doing with the time and state of mind and resources of the pandemic. Like, I can afford to do this because of the government subsidizing, whatever. And it also is just part and parcel of, I think, the pandemic experience, right? Like the isolation of it, the public, the outdoors, being in public but not really interacting, not really, just sort of passing. I'm not sure what I'm transmitting, but it is somewhat like having a germ or having a bacteria or something out there, cells. It's like some people might pick up a little bit of it, I don't know. Overhearing. It's a way to give them something to eavesdrop on, It's a public conversation I have with myself. It's a way of talking to God. You know, in a certain way, I would do it if there were people there or not. In fact, maybe I should try to go to places where there aren't people, and then I can really cut loose, and maybe I can take that into public places with people. What places do I still want to go? So I went to Brooklyn. My first venture into performing in Brooklyn was Sunday, because of the Brooklyn Book Festival. So like I'd been hitting it every day, but I still kind of got up kind of early. It was not easy. And I left here around 1 or so. I think I got to Brooklyn. I had to go over the bridge, so I went over the Manhattan Bridge, and I came back on the Brooklyn Bridge. Beautiful. You know, it just drops you off right there, basically. And the bike lanes out there are so great. It's an annual tradition for me. I've been going to it for I think, 10 years. And, you know, I'm sure that I went that first year if they were doing it, 2011. So it's just become an annual thing for me. But I don't know. It's kind of first and foremost important for me to cover Manhattan because I live in Manhattan, because I don't know how long I'm going to get to live in Manhattan. I'm hoping this is not the end of my development and being able to, you know, do this here and foster this here and grow this here, because even though Brooklyn might be a better peer group, like, I do feel very isolated here. I feel like all of the people like me are in Brooklyn, and it's cheaper there. Oh my God, I went to the so this Vietnamese, or this pho place I go to, right? It's been my go-to spot once I found out about it, because it's cheap. I could get vermicelli with pork for $11. So I've been going there like once a week, twice a week. I go today, I order on the phone, I go over, and I see the order on the thing, it's like $14. I'm like, that's not mine. So I go up and I'm like, yeah, I got the vermicelli, and they're like, yeah, it's $14.50. I'm like, no, I ordered the vermicelli, and they're like, yeah, we had to raise the prices because of, you know, everything's more expensive. It was shocking to me because, I mean, I get people are raising prices. It was $10.92 literally before. That was how much it was after tax. Now it was $14.15. That's $3.25 more than it was. That's like what? That's over a 25% markup. Like, the fact that they didn't give me any warning, like, I can't afford it. I will not go back to this place. I literally can't afford that. That's way too much money. I ate at a place in Brooklyn on Sunday, this burrito place. I got a bowl. I think the total price was like $10 or $11. And it was just like a lot of great, you know, things are just cheaper out there, is my point. Like, because it's Manhattan, because it's only extremely rich people and people on vacation, there is no marketplace for poor people. Like, poor people don't live here. Poor people do not live anywhere south of 110th Street in Manhattan, really. You know, they live in the boroughs, far out, you know. So there's just no economy for that, really. Other than like kind of the welfare, you know, there's government housing, and so there's like a little bit of like a welfare economy, but it's not like good food. It's not, you know, it's cheap, but it's like, it's not healthy, you know. So yeah, the places I haven't done are mostly on the east side. I'd like to do East River Park. Love to do Tompkins, Madison Square Park. I'd love to do Union Square, of course. Seward Park, down kind of in that area, Chinatown. And then, but mostly what I don't know, I feel like it might be a better strategy to just sort of, I want to do places far away while I still can. As the weather gets not as good, then it's less likely I'm going to be wanting to go to fucking, someplace 4 miles away. Chances are when that happens, maybe I'll just go down to, this plaza right here by the Apple Store. I could perform there. Or I could perform, Washington Square Park. That's my home field, essentially. Bleecker Park I love. I still haven't really performed there. It's kind of small. I don't really want to disrupt people. With my performances, a lot of times, I kind of avoid setting up where there's a lot of people. Like, if there's a bunch of people picnicking or something like that, like, I'm not going to get in the middle of them and start reading my poetry. Like, I don't want to bother people. If there's people walking by, like I said, and they just hear fragments, that's good. Or if people come up and sit because they want to listen to it, that's good too. Or if there's like music, if there's a band or something playing nearby, then I don't worry about it because there's already something loud. And so, people's hearing is already being disrupted by that, so I figure I can just kind of add to the fucking, like Washington Square Park, there's already tons of fucking loud stuff going on there, so it's a very easy place to just go and like, be low key. Although I don't know, it's hard to, I never try to grab people's attention there. That's what I need to move into. I need to actually kind of make it into like a show that people might take videos of or pictures of or follow me on Instagram or buy my book or film me or whatever, which I can do. That's why I need more time here, That's why I need next summer. Although, I don't know. I am definitely feeling alienated from the people. When I go to Brooklyn, like at the Brooklyn Book Festival, it's like, oh my God. These people have texture. Like, they're cool, they're smart, they have ideas. They care about books and literature and writers. And they're not just pirates. They're not just corporate, raiders. They're not bland fitness, or students. I don't necessarily have anything against students, but like, I don't know. You're not rooted to life, and like, especially in New York, it feels like they've just taken over the village in a way that's like, that's not good. That can't be good. I mean, I wonder, because there are so many fucking like young people, maybe with some money, there's got to be some kind of cool bohemian performance, like underground of students, right? In the village, just doing shows and stuff. There has to be, right? I mean, they live there. Is there a bunch of 20-year-olds like doing poetry in a basement or something? I don't know. But, so the poetry festival, so I rode the scooter over. I ended up running into a couple friends. I ran into my friend Batia from Poetry Project, and then my friend Tanya from LA. I actually am way more connected and have way better relationships with the poets from LA than any of the poets in New York. I've had way more contact with them, I'd say, this summer. From my friend Hannah, who was here. But we ended up talking for like a couple hours. So that I was just about ready to set up and do my performance, because I've been walking around talking to people at the tables. I would say it was probably the most productive Brooklyn Book Festival I've ever had, because I actually talk to people. Usually I just go there and like I'm too afraid. I just walk around, kind of look at the books, and then leave. Go to some of the panels. I never engage with anybody. But honestly, it's like a utopia. It's all just like these fucking beautiful, like smart, cool people like talking about books. It's just the greatest. It's the greatest concentration of humanity probably in this country at any one time. I'm kidding, but not really. I don't know. It's like my favorite day of the year. This year's festival was about half. They had about half as many events, half as many stages. There were half as many. There wasn't any kind of underground or kind of raggedy small press, which I kind of. There wasn't like micro press, which I kind of. I was looking forward to seeing that kind of stuff. But I ended up reading by this fountain by the Borough Hall Park station. You know, I've spent a lot of time in that area, so it brings back a lot of memories. Long Island University, Brooklyn is there, and I dwell on that constantly. How I blew it and didn't get into the MFA program, or I did get into the MFA program, but I just didn't go because I'm an idiot. I think about that constantly. There's no changing it now, I guess. Then I went over to the Promenade, which is right there. I mean, Brooklyn Heights is like... It might be the most beautiful part of New York at this point. As far as it having the mix of, like, gorgeous architecture, really human kind of... It's got, like, that Hotel St. George, like that neon sign. It's just beautiful. And the view... It's right near downtown, so you can get into lower Manhattan quickly. But it's quiet, and it's in Brooklyn, and I don't know. It's something special. So I went out down to the Promenade. There's this big circular, like, stone end piece of the Promenade, so I went on there and I read. It felt like a fitting kind of ritualistic. You know, it's overlooking downtown Manhattan and the Bay and all this gorgeous sunset once again. It's the sunset of the year. You know, it's October. So, summer's over. We're going into the night, the winter. And there's a lot of people. I mean, the Promenade, it's like, you know, there's always people up there. So there's people walking by and shit. I didn't read that long yesterday. I probably read, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes combined between the few different places I went. But it was such a big weekend and it was such a big day that I felt like because I connected with my friend and we talked about setting up a reading, we ended up meeting one of her friends. So... It was a productive day. And any chance, I mean, I've been so, like, frugal with my socializing that, like, it's good that any chance I get to just, like, really feel comfortable and nurture a relationship with somebody in the literary world, I feel like that's a positive, you know. So she might set up a reading. I told her she should get a reading at KGB Bar. So... we may be doing that. That would be cool. I've got the thing I'm filming tomorrow. I suppose probably this weekend, later this week, probably Friday, I'll go back to Washington Square. It'll be a relief when the weather... Because as much as I feel like it's important to do this, like, it is a lot of work. Like, the last 2 days, I've just been... basically in bed, not doing shit, because just recovering, you know. And I'm hooked on TikTok. So I try to balance, you know, my life TikTok balance. I try to go out into the world and absorb real life, people watch, experience New York City, all the architecture, all the history, all the, like I said, the spirits, the soul, be the last real human alive person here, the last poor person, the last poet Maudette, the last kind of gutter, smelly, delinquent, avant-gardist. And I take a map every time from my overhead view. So that's part of the project, you know. I'll collect all these maps. I'll collect all the video diaries about it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I should have been recording the readings, but it feels right to let them go. And I'm still in the stages where I don't want to call attention to myself. So setting up the recording and tripod and stuff, like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want to go to all that trouble. I also want to talk about Seinfeld because part of my work-life TikTok balance. Well, pix11, the station on... I've probably been watching too much TV this whole summer because it's kind of insane if you think about it. I mean, I never watched TV really from... I think the last time I lived in a house with a TV was probably, 2009 or something when I lived with my parents. Basically, since I moved out, I've never personally owned a TV. So I never watched fucking TV. But the pandemic, right, kind of got me back into the habit because it was literally all I could do. My mom, had pretty much control over everything, and, it was the only thing I was really allowed to do. So I don't know. I can't even remember what I did before. And I don't even know how much time I've been spending doing it. Like I said, it's kind of a counterbalance because it feels like it takes a lot of physical effort to go out into New York, go down the 4 flights of stairs, carrying my scooter, or like this summer, right? It was just hot a lot of the time. Maybe I should have been reading. Maybe I should have been writing. Maybe I should have been... but I was just... I mean, literally, I watched YouTube basically from March 2020 to March 2021. I was basically on YouTube 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day, sadly. And so, I don't know. I'm still in that a little bit. And I don't know why I've been watching TV, to be honest. Partially, before I was watching TV, I had the radio set up and I was listening to Theme Time Radio Hour. So basically, I've got my rolling station in this room, and that's where the TV is. So before, I was listening to Theme Time while I'd roll, and I'd smoke, and I'd listen to Theme Time, really, I'd listen to hours of the shit. Just sitting there, waiting for thoughts to come or whatever. And I write down lines whenever they come to me or whatever. But I don't know. I haven't really been whip-it lashing myself to work or anything. And I don't know why I started turning on the TV, but I reckon I probably started turning it on in June. I don't think I was really watching TV in May. But sometime around June, I started turning it on. And at first, I didn't have that many channels. Most of what I watched was fucking Crook and Chase. In the beginning, I was watching country music television, pretty much exclusively. And I really just watch it while I'm rolling, which I guess takes up a lot of my day. But then I started watching According to Jim. And I gotta say, I watched a lot of it, I'd say, in June and July. It's weird because they show this. They only have 5 shows that they show. According to Jim and How I Met Your Mother are the big ones that I watched a little bit. And I gotta say, it's sad, but now, a lot of times when I turn it on, I'm like, oh, I've seen this one. I've seen a lot of the fucking episodes. I don't know how that happened, because it's such a waste of time. Have I not been reading? I don't know. It's such an automated process. And also, I've been telling myself that I'm, studying it. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to write a sitcom, so I need to, watch all these sitcoms. It's, bullshit. I think According to Jim was just, sentimental. It reminds me of, my family and shit in the Midwest. And also, it has kind of political whatever. It's interesting to kind of dissect it politically. And then How I Met Your Mother is about New York, right? And also kind of single life. So it's it helps me kind of, it's just another angle on New York City, right? As somebody who's obsessed with New York City for the dumb reason that everybody is, seeing all these different fictionalized versions of it plays into that fantasy, you know, and also helps you define it, figure out what it is, tell your own story. That's the idea with my TV show. I thought if I watch these other TV shows, maybe it'll help me think narratively on that, in that way or something. And maybe it did, because to be honest, I put together a lot of pretty good episodes of my show this summer. I would say I've had a very productive summer creatively, even though there's probably more that I could have done. Between getting my show back on its feet and really doing some good episodes, all the writing I've done, and the public performance, KGB, doing the Don Yorty blog, Poetry Festival, and now these outdoor kind of busking rituals. And the scooter as well has been a big part of it. Just kind of like enjoying the art of living. That's what I told my dad. I've been working on the art of living. Like, during that last little pocket of time in the pandemic before they put us back to the capitalist kind of wage labor thing, it felt like we could just enjoy taking our time through the day and not putting a lot of pressure on ourselves to produce. So I think I did good. Maybe I could have gone harder, but I did okay, you know. And so just keeping that momentum up, in spite of the fact that I was watching tons of TV. The TV is partially just a way to recuperate because, like I said, getting around the city, I walked everywhere until August. So just physically, that was a lot of, you know, I couldn't get that far either. Going to the East Village takes 45 minutes, you know, so I literally didn't go to Central Park or hardly anywhere, you know, until I got the damn scooter. So the first, you know, March, April, May, June, July, I was basically within 1 mile of this place, that was part of my intention. I really want to get to know this land in these neighborhoods and these buildings and this everything, you know. So walking and absorbing it at that speed and being sunk into it has been very important to me. In my books and the reading and everything has been kind of along those lines. My writing, my thinking, my diaries, my show, right? A lot of it is just kind of cataloging pedestrian New York life, the blocks, the way that, you know, the people, thinking, what it looks like, what it feels like, the beauty of the neighborhoods, the architecture, the flow. So the TV has been sort of a way to rest, relax, recuperate while I roll. It's an automated process too. Like reading, it's like, okay, if I didn't have the TV, would I be reading instead? Maybe. I don't know. I do a fair amount of reading as well. I don't know. Is the TV... Then I suddenly got more channels. So now I have all these channels. Now I've got Pix11, which I'm obsessed with. But also Channel 13, the local PBS channel, is really good. And CUNY TV is great. I love CUNY TV. I've got a couple CUNY stations that are wonderful. So I do see like Democracy Now! Richard Wolff is on sometimes. You know, things I used to watch on YouTube are like smart shows, news shows. Whoever that woman, Christine Amanpour, I'll watch her sometimes. Or, you know, PBS NewsHour. A lot of baseball. I've been getting into baseball. That's kind of been a big thing for me the past... You know, when that girl took me to that Yankee game, that was a big thing for me. That was one of the first things I did after the pandemic. It was wonderful. And New York is a great baseball town. So pix11 it's my current obsession. They showed the Mets games and the Yankees games. So, I'll stay. Keith Hernandez and the other guy on the Mets games are the best announcers. They're so freaking smart. They're so funny and just like they're so New York in that they're just like savvy. They're cool about it, They're funny. They're intelligent. They're very, very smart. Well, the weird thing about pix11 is when I ride over to that part of town, the east side, kind of over by United Nations, going up to Sutton Place Park and the Upper East Side and the bridge and whatnot, the Queensboro Bridge. If you're coming back down, kind of by Beekman Tower, and that's a really nice part of town that I never went to before. There's certain parts of Manhattan, even though I've lived in New York for 10 years, I've never been to. And, to be honest, traveling on city streets is not something I ever did. Because I'm never in a car, and I'm never on a bike in Manhattan. And so seeing Manhattan and the island and the blocks and the buildings from that kind of experience in the middle of the street where you can see both sides, where you can see kind of the canyon, where you really get the lay of the land, your perspective, and just traveling and having it all come in and just taking it all in on the scooter, it really gives you the best appreciation, I think, because it's like a flaneur experience. It's a little faster, and it's New York, so you really do have to keep your eye out. I'm constantly, and to be honest, there's a lot of close calls. There's fucking delivery drivers going past you super fast. There's cars, there's trucks. There's pedestrians that just stand in the middle of shit. There's a lot of close calls. You constantly have to be on the lookout in Manhattan because people are just going every which way. So you can't completely just look around, which kind of sucks. But coming down, I think it's 2nd Avenue, around 42nd Street, somewhere around there, is the pix11 building where they have, their studios and shit. So I remember seeing it and being like, oh yeah, I watched them on TV. So then I started really watching it, and to be honest, it feels like that old kind of New York feeling, the last of the kind of native New Yorker vibe. It's like the TV station that's kind of selling that brand. They have, like I said, the Mets games, predominantly Mets games, although sometimes they have Yankee games. I think that game is tonight, actually. Did that happen already, the playoff? Yankees versus Red Sox, 1-game playoff, and that might be on pix11. I'm not sure. Keith Hernandez is on fucking Seinfeld, and that's the other thing that pix11 shows is Seinfeld. Every fucking night from 11 to 12, Seinfeld. And I don't know if you can underestimate the role that Seinfeld plays in just filling out. It's like the fictional universe version of New York. It kind of creates a believable facsimile of what New York life was like. It definitely probably in the 80s, let's say. Manhattan specifically. That milieu. I think Seinfeld draws a lot from the detail of that, the characters, Crazy Joe Davola, Newman. There's all these kind of funky Joe Sacamano. Who's the guy, Kramer's friend? Sacamano. Joe Sacamano? That doesn't sound right. Bob Sacamano. So, that Joe Franklin, New York, it's kind of coming out of this tradition, which in a weird way feels weirdly obliterated and severed. That's what's odd about it, is for so much of my life in the 20th century, you're just receiving this pop culture narrative and image of New York, Manhattan life, Woody Allen fucking movies, Seinfeld, Joe Franklin, all this fucking music, Cole Porter music, Broadway music, so many movies are made about fucking living in New York, novels written about writers obsessed with like New York, New York, New York, and what it means to like live. I mean, even the Beats, all this stuff is like about being sort of a normal person in New York City, and yet now it feels like there is no there, in the sense that like there isn't any normal person in New York City. There's like a jet set kind of transient wealthy aristocracy, whether it's tech people who can work remotely, so how invested are they? And a lot of them are just transplants from Silicon Valley or wherever. Then you have finance people, which, like, as far as I can tell, the people in the West Village have no culture. Like, they're the blandest, most basic, white, like, frat people you could. They're SantaCon, right? It's just plain clothes SantaCon all the time. It's like, so the village as Bohemia, the East Village as Bohemia, the continuity of that has really been severed. Now, that's not to say that there isn't sort of a semblance of that in Brooklyn, let's say, but like, let's just talk about theater, right? Like, to be honest, I don't know anybody that has come here and made like a sustainable, like, growing, like, small theater that has like a venue, any kind of foothold in any way. There was a guy I did a movie with, that Kitchen Hamlet movie. He moved to New York. He went to Kenyon, right? So he was like, and he was successful. He had been to like the O'Neill Theater Institute, had chosen one of his plays as like, he was like one of the promising new playwrights and this and that. So he had connections in New York. And he moved to New York a little bit after college, I think probably around 2008, 2009. And he lived in the Bronx, and I would see, through Facebook, his Facebook statuses and shit, just sort of about his life, things he would share. And, this was before I moved to New York, so I'm kind of trying to figure out, like, what other people are doing. This was around the time of, like, the Patti Smith articles about, like, should I move to New York, and is it still a place for artists, and blah, blah, blah. And so this guy, he lived in the Bronx, I think, and he worked at Balthazar as a host, I think. And he had a play there was a theater festival, the Fringe Festival, I think, which maybe I just don't follow it anymore, but as far as I know, it really doesn't exist. At least not like it did. Like, he had a play at the Cherry Lane Theater that was like part of the Fringe Festival. And, at this point it still felt, and he was a part of some theater company that was like based kind of in Manhattan-ish. Like, I don't know if they did things in Midtown or had spaces. They had a website, and, it was like a collective probably of people that went to college together. I don't think they had a space, but like, they were committed to like doing shows together and plays and this and that. And, like I said, as far as I know, the Fringe Festival, like, that doesn't even exist, really. There's people doing theater in theaters downtown or in spaces here and there, but it doesn't feel like there's a sense of like any kind of like network or widespread, like, the people that I've known do plays very sporadically that, are in black box stages way, usually in Midtown, probably in just some kind of nondescript building. Like, it's not like Cafe Chino or some shit. I've never been to Bushwick Star or the Brick. Those were the two kind of like theater spaces that I knew about in Brooklyn that had like some kind of fucking foothold, but like, as far as I know, they weren't really like theater companies. It wasn't like circle in the square, or this, New York used to be the incubator for this kind of shit, like La Mama or the Living Theater or Performance Group or the New Group, or, there's tons of fucking examples. The Manhattan Project, of like people that lived in the village, right, and put on plays there and shit. Cafe Chino, Theater Genesis. You read about all this shit, All these playwrights came out of it. Lanford Wilson, Sam Shepard, Pinheiro. Now it's like you have Broadway level shit, which is like celebrities and, Susan Laurie Parks and that kind of level. Famous, established. And then you have just kind of weird community stuff that like, don't get me wrong, there's theater being made everywhere, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's time, resources, energy to really create work that's bold and is like sustainable. Like you can't sustain like the dedication that you need in a lot of ways. Like look at what happened to us in the fucking house. That was our space, that was the company, and just boom, it all got evicted, because of money bullshit. So the things that I'm doing as a single performer, just sort of taking up itinerant wherever I can, it's like that's the only shit that can kind of exist, But anyway, so this guy who had to play in the Fringe Festival, he went to the MFA in Austin, Texas, or he went to Michener Center or whatever. He got an MFA and he lives in Austin, Texas. He's lived there for 10 years. He's married. He's got a kid. And I'm sure he's involved with, he probably teaches in the university or has some kind of job doing that. And there's probably, a whole network of funky hipster theater makers who live there, so he gets to do projects, and he's had a whole life there, in Austin, Texas. Like that, I would say, is probably a more typical story. If you stayed in New York and you really like try to outlast it and exist here, it's just so hard to scrape together circumstances to like this, right? Like this would be an incredible space for me to be able to operate from, but it's very tenuous. Like a lot of this shit. As soon as stuff gets rolling in New York, they get evicted, their rent gets raised. It's just like, it's a tale as old as time, right? How long do you want to hang in it? How long can you hang in it? The rent controlled apartment is what made people be able to survive. Part of Seinfeld, I think, is about not working explicitly. Like, those characters, George and Elaine typically are the ones who you see have kind of like office jobs. Elaine's kind of into publishing. She's got kind of cool uptown jobs, the Peterman catalog. She's like smart. She's from Baltimore. Did she go to Sarah Lawrence or Bard or something? Didn't she go to Barnard or something? I forget. She went to a good college. I remember that. The thing that I've noticed about Seinfeld, and I'm already 2 hours. Well, first of all, I want to say pix11, the weathermen, are super flossy. That's one part of that makes it super New York. They have this guy, Mr. G. Look up Mr. G on Google. He's the weatherman at pix11. He's got the Polly Walnuts kind of wings, the kind of white, sideburn thing. And just he wears these super flossy. He looks like he's from, like some New York guy from the 70s, He looks like Stan Lee, like he's just got that old school kind of, that you just don't find that anymore. That kind of grungy Kramer. Kramer is like this really funky, like if you met Kramer in real life, he'd probably smell bad, like That's the old New York. The Seinfeld show is populated. And so that's one of the things about that I've noticed. So at 11 p.m., they usually show like one of the later episodes first from like the later seasons. And then at 11:30, they've been showing the story arc of when they pitched the show about nothing. So that's from like the third or fourth season, which was actually written by Larry David. And you can tell because, to be honest, the show is really Larry David's show, and it's more like Curb Your Enthusiasm than I think we realize. I've noticed from watching, because like on TikTok, right? For some reason on TikTok and YouTube, like Curb Your Enthusiasm clips are like super fucking popular. So I'm always seeing these Curb Your Enthusiasm clips on TikTok, and it's the same as the earlier episodes of Seinfeld, where it's a comedy of manners. It's always some kind of like social quibble, and he's cranky about it. Like Larry David is like cranky about it, and like he'll squabble about it. And I've noticed that he kind of writes that stuff as much, well, through Jerry in a way. Like these kind of like, I don't want to hug and things. These antisocial tendencies. Being super judgmental. That kind of misanthropic, but also like very shallow quality. That's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm thing, but also a Seinfeld thing. Oh, God. I can't even begin to talk about this because this is something I really need to do a whole episode on. It's only been I'm already done. It's been 2 hours, so I want to be done and go do something else. It's just one of those ways of conceptualizing New York and seeing the way it used to be. I don't know. I guess in a certain way, not that I'm dissatisfied with my surroundings, but like I'm kind of living in this theme park of New York, which Seinfeld is like, one of the fucking fictional mascots of that, like in the same way that whatever, the Magic Kingdom has all these different franchises or whatever. Goofy. Jerry Seinfeld is like the Goofy, of fucking singles, adult. Well, that's the thing that is different about Seinfeld than the other sitcoms that I've seen from that time on TV, like which are predominantly like family oriented. They're in a home. They're kind of propaganda for that status quo of like what nuclear family and shit. The 50s. They're really like in the 50s, all these fucking sitcoms. They're like the fucking Honeymooners or Leave It to Beaver or something. They're variations on that. But Seinfeld is a whole different operation because it's really about being... It's much more like the lifestyle that we're thrust into now, where we're independent contractors. We're freelance, we work from home, or you have part-time jobs, you're single, you're dating, you're just the adventure of that kind of life before you get married, before you have kids. Seinfeld is not about people who are married or have kids. None of those characters are married or have kids. They're in New York. They're living life. They're having adventures. They make adventures out of the kind of like everyday life, the nuances of it, the magic of it. It shows how much there is in nothing. These stories that are dismissed as being about nothing. It's amazing how much is there because it's our life. It's what, whereas these shows about families, these are like morals. These are things that they're trying to tell us. You should behave this way. This is what a good father does, Seinfeld's not... The characters aren't like learning and growing and apologizing and all this shit. They're just like cosmically, I don't know, fucking themselves over, and they live in a kind of, I don't know, purgatory or something, like all sitcom characters. But one of the things I've noticed about the early episodes is, like, a lot of the times it's just about how Kramer fucks things up. Like, Kramer a lot of the time is kind of the spoiler of this or that. He blurts something out, or he says something he's not supposed to say. He stopped short with George's mom. You know, and there's some kind of darker storylines, I would say. Was that an early episode? Well, maybe not. I think that was a later episode with James Spader where he's going through the 12 steps. Oh, God. I think because it's based on real life, it has this kind of, like, rough edge. Even the apartment and stuff. It feels like reality. It feels perennial in that way. It constantly renews itself. It doesn't look old. When you watch Seinfeld, you're not really like, oh, this feels... there's certain things about it that have aged, don't get me wrong. Like the episode, okay, I was watching the episode where with the tryptophan, where his girlfriend has all the toys. She's got these toys from like the 70s because they were her dad's or something. And Jerry wants to play with them, but she won't let him. And so he drugs her basically to get her to fall asleep so he can play with the toys. And the joke is that it's like he's roofing her to sleep with her. But he's not sleeping with her, right? The joke is that he's playing with her toys. He's more interested in that. And so it was very much like the Cosby situation, because it's played for laughs. This idea that and then George is in on it, and then Elaine is in on it, and they're all joking about they're going to drug this woman and take advantage of her and stuff. So it's really triggering, let's say. And the fact, I mean, Seinfeld does that a lot, where it's like the game of the scene is, you know, like she's being roofied, but it's for this other purpose, which is funny. And it didn't work in that instance. Like, I saw this clip of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and honestly, I couldn't believe they did this joke, because it did not work. And it was a huge, huge risk and callback. And it was with, I'm not sure, it must have been the Seinfeld reunion season, although I wasn't sure if they had done that before or after Michael Richards' kind of meltdown, his career ending. I wasn't sure, but in the episode, they make a joke about it. He's with JB Smoove, and I forget what it is. JB Smoove, like, fucking suggests he does some fucking thing. I forget what it was, and it doesn't work. So Kramer, like, is, like, yelling at him. He's like, oh, I wish there was some name I could call you to make you, like, mad or something. It's like, it's clear that he's, like, you know, implying that he's going to say, you know, that. And so he looks over and all these people, like, I get what the joke is supposed to be, but it really didn't work. It wasn't, if you're going to go there, like, this is Michael Richards. This is a sensitive thing. Like, he did a bad thing, right? Like, that could have ruined Seinfeld, to be honest. That could have canceled the whole show. It's kind of unbelievable that people still watch it after that, to be honest, because that was fucked up. And so to, like, first of all, if I were him, I would probably not want to do a callback to that. But if you're going to do it, you better make sure it's funny as fuck. You better make sure it's, like, one of the funniest fucking things that's, you know, because, like, that's a very, you just don't go there and, like, dude, you should be ashamed. Just forget about this ever happened. You're lucky you're even on this right now, because your career should be over. But it's Larry David, right? So you trust him. Maybe it sounded funnier in the pitch or something. It just didn't really work. It wasn't necessarily, like, the most offensive thing I've ever seen, but I was sort of like, man, I can't believe, like, Kramer is, like, joking, making a riff on this, like, like, I get what they were trying to do, because it could potentially be funny if you did that, and if you did something with that could have been funny. But I'm more of the mind, just like, just move on, dude. Like, you're lucky that they're allowing you to fucking be here. I don't know. I'll talk more about Seinfeld later. I know that wasn't really like the most in-depth whatever convo, but it's all tied together. I don't know why I've been thinking about it and why it's been shaping my thinking. Maybe that's just like, because is Seinfeld like a stunted, toxic, with all of these sitcoms, you do get the impression they are advertising some kind of behavior that they want you to embody. And so what does it mean that with Seinfeld, with Seinfeld, this is what they're selling? My understanding of how Seinfeld developed, and it's expertly reconstructed through this season, where it's a storyline. How amazing is that Larry David wrote the pitching of the show into the show? I think that's incredible. And it's a story arc, so you get to follow it through the whole season. It's just good writing. It's more enriching because it has duration. It's a bigger story. It's my impression of it is it was like a total fluke. Like they weren't even gonna order it. It got like the lowest audience numbers ever. I think they ordered like a 4-episode season, and then they ordered like a few more, and then they ordered like, it was like it took it a few years before it really figured out what it was and took off. It was developing for a couple years, and you can kind of see Larry David adjusting his sketch comedy. It has kind of, some of the scenes kind of feel like skits, but the idea that characters just discussing sort of little nuances of daily life, salsa, or just those kind of little blips of the telemarketer calls. Oh, give me your number and I'll call you where you live. That one little moment, that's right before Susan comes in and she's going to tell him. It's a big moment where they put that, and it's just like this little throwaway. It doesn't have anything to do with the story. It's just a little joke. That was kind of what was game-changing about Seinfeld, is it was willing to incorporate those kind of like in-between moments, that are not what you show on TV. I think part of what makes Seinfeld work is they treat these things that don't seem that significant like they're incredibly significant, right? Like shrinkage, or the marble rye, or black and white cookie, or these are matters of life and death of these characters. Jerry, the ass man. And the way they were able to tie everything together, that was the thing about Seinfeld that like made it like seem like kind of wildly next level creative, right? So I don't think Seinfeld was like focus grouped or like designed to get people to be selfish, narcissistic, single, city dweller, urban, sitting in coffee shops. And, like they're super shallow, man hands, and the way that Jerry, is so judgmental of the women and stuff, the way they look, that stuff hasn't really aged well. There's kind of an American Psycho element to the neatness. Although I do want to say, this is a point I do want to make, is one of the things that has really hit me rewatching Seinfeld, and I don't really know how to put this other than, like, I really think Jerry Seinfeld is an incredible actor. Like, I would love to cast him in something because I really think there's nobody that acts like he does. Like, I remember him talking about, he was nervous to act because he's not really an actor, he's a stand-up comedian. Whereas, the other people in the show are, like, the best at what they do. Like, Jason Alexander, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, and Michael Richards are absolutely, like, very precise, very skilled actors. Jerry Seinfeld is not really, but somehow he's more like himself. They're so, like, choreographed. Like, George comes from a dancing background. Jason Alexander, he won a Tony for choreographing this Jerome Robbins musical. He maybe he didn't choreograph it, but he directed it. So and he was on Broadway musicals and shit. He's like a very dancer kind of Broadway. I think the casting on Seinfeld it's some of the best. It's part of the magic of the show. Jerry Stiller, Estelle Harris, Jerry's parents, everybody, Uncle Leo, like, the casting is the guy they got to do Peterman. That's one of Larry's gifts. You see that in Curb Your Enthusiasm too. It's just like he knows how to use people, and he gets the best people. I mean, everybody's been on fucking Curb Your Enthusiasm. Everybody cool, and they all do great because he's easy to, I don't know, he's magic. I don't know. I really think Larry David is kind of the seer. But I also wonder, is there something about his way of thinking that's not good for us? Like, we're so imbued with Larry David thinking, and I wonder about this in my own psyche. Like, he's cantankerous, he's antisocial, he's judgmental, he's cranky. Is this a good, person to imitate? I don't know. Having your TikTok feed over and over again showing you, like, him having, yelling confrontations with people. But Jerry, I just want to say, I think Jerry is, like, really, his line readings and certain things he does. What'd you do? It's just like, nobody does that. The thing is, he never acts in anything, as far as I can see. He has no career as, like, a supporting actor in anything that I can see. Like, even Jon Stewart is in some movies and shit. He's in Death to Smoochie and Big Daddy. Like, I other than B movie, like, has Jerry Seinfeld ever even been in a fucking movie? Like, I certainly don't think he's really played a role. I don't know. But I think it's unfortunate because I'm sure that he thinks of himself as, like, not a good actor, but I'm telling you, even on that show, he stands out. And it's not because he, like Kramer, right? Like, Kramer is going to max out the physical comedy. George's fingertips are like, everything is just like, but it's almost too controlled. Like, that's the thing about George. It's like, now, knowing that George is sort of based on Larry David, you kind of get that, but you're also like, it's not really Larry David. Like, George is a different thing. And to be honest, I don't know. Larry David... George is kind of too orchestrated. He's, like, too... like, precise in a way. Like, even his vocal intonations and, he gets these things that he just kind of, like they're buttons he just presses, kind of, in a way. Jerry! And, it's kind of amazing to me that it took as long as it did for Jason Alexander to get a read on that character, because like he said, the first couple of seasons, he was playing it like Woody Allen. He was doing a Woody Allen kind of neurotic, And so, I think he said something around season 3, he realized that the character was based on Larry David. Which, like, I don't know how he didn't get that earlier, because the show is created by Jerry and Larry. And Jerry's in the fucking show. And, you know, Jason Alexander is playing his bald best friend who created the show with him. I don't know. You'd think you'd put that together and be like, okay, so it's this guy. So I'm playing this guy. And to be honest, like, I don't really think Jason Alexander does, like, a great Larry David impersonation. Like, there's certain things that you're like, okay, yeah, that's Larry David. But most of it is really just George. You know, like the kind of shit he does with his hands and like George is getting upset. You know, like that's George. Like Larry David doesn't really do that shit. And there's whole aspects of Larry David that are not really in the character either. Like, you know, like George posing on the fucking bearskin rug. I guess I could see Larry David doing that, but the fact that, and I hate to put it this way, but the fact that Jason Alexander has the body type that he does with kind of his hair, and that's a big part of the character, I feel like, to me. You know, he's almost like this Iago in the way he kind of like connives and manipulates and does evil kind of things and selfish kind of things. He might be the most dastardly character on the show, I would say, as far as like just being kind of a bad person. And that seems like distinctly George to me. Like Larry is more, he's getting into hot water with people, but it's more like, it doesn't seem as mean-spirited. You know, like there's something about George that you're like, this guy's kind of the devil. Or like, I don't know, there's a part of him that's like diabolical or something. Not that he's malicious, but like, you know, when Susan died, right? Like his fiance. Like, that's pretty fucking dark. Like Larry David, I don't think anything ever like that happened on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, he gave Richard Lewis his kidney. Like, he's good, right? He's chaotic good. Jason Alexander, or George, he's chaotic evil. He popped the Bubble Boy. That one was on the other day. The Moops. Alright, that's enough. I gotta get something to eat and do some other shit. I think that was good. Who knows? It's important just to do it, I guess. Good night.